August 1944. The Allies had burst out of Normandy, pushing across France at an astonishing pace. Paris was liberated. Hitler's armies were in full retreat. It seemed the war in Europe might be over by Christmas. But with every mile gained, the Allied advance created a new, desperate crisis: supply. Our frontline troops were outrunning their lifelines. Fuel, ammunition, food, medical supplies, everything they needed was hundreds of miles behind them, snarled in destroyed ports and bombed-out rail yards. Generals Dwight D. Eisenhower and Omar Bradley watched their offensive grind to a halt, threatened not by German bullets, but by an empty fuel tank. The solution to this impossible logistical nightmare didn't come from a new tank, a faster plane, or a clever tactic. It came from an unassuming vehicle, a 2.5-ton, six-wheel drive truck, designed years before by General Motors engineers. A truck that, at first glance, might have seemed unremarkable, even worthless, compared to the cutting-edge weaponry of the age. Yet, this humble workhorse, the GMC CCKW, would become the very heart of the legendary Red Ball Express, pumping lifeblood to the front lines and enabling the Allied advance to continue. It was a testament to the fact that sometimes, the greatest heroes of war aren't found on the battlefield, but in the logistics chain. This is the story of the unsung truck that saved the Allied advance, and the incredible men who drove it. D-Day in June 1944 was a triumph, and the breakout from Normandy in July and August was even more spectacular. Spearheaded by armored divisions, Allied forces were pouring across France. In just a few weeks, they covered ground that military planners hadn't anticipated reaching for months. This incredible speed, however, created a logistical paradox: success became its own biggest obstacle. The deep-water ports needed to unload massive amounts of material, like Cherbourg, were either still under German control or too heavily damaged to function efficiently. The extensive French rail network, crucial for moving bulk supplies, had been systematically destroyed by Allied bombing to impede German movements, and now it was impeding Allied movements too. Thousands of tons of supplies were piling up in Normandy, while only a few hundred miles away, tanks were running on fumes, infantry divisions were short on ammunition, and field hospitals were low on medical supplies. Without a continuous flow of everything from gasoline to socks, the lightning-fast advance would simply stop, giving the retreating Wehrmacht time to regroup and fortify. The war machine was grinding to a halt, not for lack of fighting spirit, but for lack of fuel in its belly. The solution to this crisis already existed, and it had been quietly designed and refined years before the war. Born from the General Motors design philosophy, the GMC CCKW was not a flashy weapon, but a practical, rugged, and utterly dependable utility vehicle. Its design principles emphasized simplicity, durability, and a crucial feature: all-wheel drive. Initially, some military procurement officers might have questioned the necessity of a full 6x6 drive system for a general-purpose truck, preferring simpler, cheaper 4x2 designs. But the foresight of GMC's engineers, who understood the need for military vehicles to operate off-road and in all conditions, proved invaluable. The Deuce and a Half, as it was affectionately known, featured a robust chassis, a powerful engine, and the ability to traverse extremely difficult terrain thanks to its six-wheel drive. Its parts were standardized and interchangeable, making field repairs relatively straightforward, a critical factor when thousands of these vehicles would be operating far from established repair depots. By 1944, GMC had already produced hundreds of thousands of these trucks. From the scorching deserts of North Africa to the frozen roads of Russia, via Lend-Lease, the CCKW had proven its mettle. It was built for endurance, not speed, for hauling, not fighting, a true workhorse that, in the chaos of the rapidly moving European front, was about to become irreplaceable. With the supply crisis threatening to cripple the entire Western Front, General Eisenhower's logistics staff devised a desperate, audacious plan, the Red Ball Express. Established on August 25, 1944, its mission was simple but monumental: create a continuous, high-speed, one-way trucking convoy system to rush supplies from the beaches of Normandy and the rear depots all the way to the front lines. The name, Red Ball, came from American railroad slang, where Red Ball freight designated express shipments that received priority handling. The routes themselves were marked with large red circles painted on signs and vehicle fenders, establishing strict one-way traffic lanes. Two main routes were designated, northbound for supplies, southbound for returning empty trucks. Strict rules were enforced: no civilian traffic, no unauthorized stops, and a minimum speed. The scale of the operation was staggering. It required more than 6,000 trucks and 75,000 men. Many of these men were African American soldiers from segregated quartermaster and transportation units, who faced the dual challenges of intense combat zone logistics and systemic racial discrimination. Yet, these soldiers, often overlooked in historical narratives, were the lifeblood of the Red Ball Express, driving relentlessly for up to 20 hours a day. Without this massive, coordinated effort, the Allied advance would have stalled completely. The Red Ball Express was not just a logistics operation, it was a desperate gamble to keep the war moving. The success of the Red Ball Express hinged entirely on the reliability and performance of its trucks, and none were more critical than the GMC CCKW 2.5-ton 6x6. This vehicle, previously seen as a mere utility truck, became the undisputed king of the road during the frenetic race across France. Tens of thousands of CCKWs formed an unbroken chain, carrying vital supplies, 90% of everything the Allied armies needed, over distances of up to 400 miles. Each truck could carry approximately 5,000 pounds of cargo, and in total, the Red Ball Express moved an average of 12,500 tons of supplies every single day. The CCKW's six-wheel drive proved indispensable on the often muddy, cratered, and improvised roads of war-torn France. Its robust construction meant it could absorb incredible punishment, often driven far beyond its intended capacities, yet still keep going. When breakdowns occurred, the CCKW's design simplicity and availability of interchangeable parts meant mechanics could get them back on the road quickly. As James Ruckert of the 514th Quartermaster Regiment recounted in interviews documented by the Cleveland Plain Dealer, those trucks ran 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We were literally working them to death, but they just kept going. Washington Rector of the 3916th Quartermaster Truck Company echoed this sentiment in the U.S. Army Quartermaster Foundation archives, marveling at the truck's endurance under extreme stress. The deuce and a half was the perfect machine for an imperfect situation, transforming from a humble design into the unwavering pulse of the Allied war effort. While the GMC CCKW was the mechanical heart of the Red Ball Express, the predominantly African American soldiers who drove and maintained these vehicles were its soul. These men faced incredible hardships, enduring punishing schedules, constant danger, and the additional burden of institutional racism within the segregated U.S. Army. Driving for the Red Ball Express meant working up to 20 hours a day, often in blackout conditions at night, navigating unfamiliar roads under the threat of German strafing runs, snipers, and ambushes. Fatigue was constant, accidents were common, and the roads were treacherous. Dr. Matthew Delmont, a historian at Dartmouth College, highlights in The Forgotten Story of Black Soldiers and the Red Ball Express how these soldiers performed admirably under duress, despite the dangers of the route and their often substandard equipment and living conditions. They were indispensable, yet often denied the recognition and respect they deserved. Veteran James Ruckert recounted the exhaustion, but also the pride: we knew we were important. If we didn't get the gas and ammo up there, the guys at the front couldn't fight. Their dedication ensured that the fuel reached Patton's tanks and the ammunition reached the infantry. They literally kept the war moving, embodying resilience and courage on a daily basis. Their contribution was not only to the Allied victory but also a powerful, often overlooked, testament against the racist doctrines that sought to diminish their capabilities and sacrifice. The Red Ball Express ran for 83 days, officially from August 25 to November 16, 1944, before the liberation of the port of Antwerp and the repair of French railways allowed for more traditional logistical operations. In that short but critical period, it moved over 400,000 tons of supplies, a monumental feat that historians credit with enabling the Allied advance across France and preventing the offensive from stalling. And at the heart of this colossal undertaking was the humble GMC CCKW. This truck, once a seemingly mundane design, proved that fundamental reliability, rugged simplicity, and robust engineering were just as crucial to victory as any tank or bomber. It wasn't designed for glory, but it earned its place in history by simply getting the job done, day after day, mile after mile. The Red Ball Express and its deuce and a half truck stand as a powerful reminder of the unsung heroes of World War II, the logisticians, the mechanics, and especially the drivers, many of them African American, who labored in the shadows but whose tireless efforts directly contributed to the Allied victory. They transformed a desperate situation into a legend, proving that sometimes, the most worthless piece of equipment, when combined with unparalleled human dedication, can become the very lifeline of an entire war. The story of the GMC CCKW and the Red Ball Express is a profound illustration of how logistical prowess and the right tools, wielded by courageous hands, can literally determine the fate of nations. It underscores that war is not just fought on the front lines, but won by the supply lines that feed them. From a mechanic's drawing board, conceived as a simple, durable transport, the CCKW rose to become the indispensable backbone of the Allied charge. It connected the docks of Normandy to the deepest reaches of the front line, an arterial flow of life-giving supplies. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't armed, but it was absolutely essential. The next time you hear about the breakout from Normandy or the liberation of Paris, remember the Red Ball Express. Remember the thousands of GMC CCKW trucks churning through mud and dust. And remember the thousands of brave, often forgotten, soldiers who drove them, keeping the war machine fed and proving that some of the greatest heroes of World War II rode not in tanks, but behind the wheel of a deuce and a half.